Buttons. Good morning. It's Tuesday, and that means Writer's Chat. And we are so glad you are all here. My name is Johnny Alexander. I'm joined by co-host Melissa Stroh, Brandy Bro, and Pam Halter. And we've invited everybody who wants to come on because we are going to be talking about last lines and having people share last lines of a classic. We left the definition of classic up to each individual so they can decide what they wanted to read really and what they wanted to share. We talk a lot about first lines when we're writing short stories, novels, any kind of fiction, novellas, but we don't even in nonfiction too. I mean, that first line has to grab, that first paragraph has to pull the reader in and so that they'll keep on reading the book, whatever it is. So, but we don't always spend as much time on last lines, and it is kind of hard because when you just jump into a last line and you don't know the whole story, you don't really know, just as, that kind of a participant, how much it's going to resonate with someone who's not read the entire story or nonfiction book or whatever. But we're going to try. So I'm going to try to share my screen, and I think it's going to let me just very easily for once. Except I've also got to minimize this so that I can see. So I chose, now you're not going to be able to probably see this, Call the Wild. I can hold up the book again later as one of my two classics. I've got two here. This is an old story written by Jack London based on his experiences, fictionalized version of his experiences in the Yukon Territory during the Gold Rush days. And the story is about a Saint Bernard cross dog who had been raised by a judge in a wealthy environment, pampered, all of that. But he's kidnapped or dognapped and taken to the Yukon Territory to be a sled dog. And about his experiences up there with people who do not treat him as nicely as his former owner had, with other dogs who were sometimes mean, sometimes not. He actually ends up, as the story progresses, he ends up killing another dog so that then he can be the lead dog in the sled runs going out as these different people are trying to find gold. So during the course of the story, he comes across different people, different animals, different experiences. He gets beaten practically to death because he will not go across a pond, or I'm not really sure, a body of water that is ice crusted, but because the spring thaw has set in, it's dangerous. But these people are determined they're going to go across that ice anyway, and he's beaten until can't even stand up. And they set across and go down, and they all drown, and the dogs that were still in the traces all drown. It was horrific. But a gentleman there that had told them not to go takes care of Buck the dog, and they become partners, and they just kind of go and live their life. And Buck often leaves him alone and goes off wandering. And during one of those times when Buck is alone, this is towards the end of the story, he has saved this man's life a couple times. The guy has saved Buck's life. So they have that kind of a relationship. Um, he's gone from the camp where they're looking for gold. And when he comes back, it's to find that other men are killing his John Thornton's his name, that the guy who was very nice to him, and his companions, and then Buck just kind of massacres all the people who killed his buddy, his friend. And so now years have passed, and this is like the last two paragraphs of the story, which you may have been reading while I've been talking. The Call of the Wild. He crosses alone from the smiling timberland and comes down into an open space among the trees. Here, a yellow stream flows from rotted moose hide sacks and sinks into the ground, with long grasses growing through it and vegetable mold overrunning it and hiding its yellow from the sun. And here he muses for a time, howling once, long and mournfully, ere he departs. But he's not always alone. When the long winter nights come on and the wolves follow their meat into the lower valleys, he may be seen running at the head of the pack through the pale moonlight or glimmering borealis, leaping gigantic above his fellows, his great throat a bellow as he sings a song of the younger world, which is the song of the pack. Okay, I'm trying to get you guys all back on here now so I can see you. So, any comments on this last line?
That seems to really capsulize what you described the story as and just leaves you just really thinking and looking back on the story. I liked that quite a bit.
I like it too. Yeah, anyone else?
A
Yeah,
lot of
I
great symbolism. Oh, go ahead, Pam.
no, it's just saying what I don't think I would have enjoyed the story and a description of it. I would have been traumatized, but it's good to see that I think it's wrapped up beautifully. It feels like a beautiful ending to me, almost like it was worth getting through.
Hmm. I will say I mean, there is violence in it, of course, but it's not gratuitous. I mean, you remember when it was written and it is a children's classic. In this whole thing about the Song of the Pack and the Song of the Younger World, this is part of Buck's journey that he starts like hearing this primitive in a primitive part of his brain, this call, which is what helps him survive, especially at the beginning when he's being beaten a lot and he had never been treated like that. And it seems like that beating brings out more and more of this call from his ancestors. So here's the book. I don't know if you guys, I held it up, but I don't think y'all probably saw it earlier. So there's it. Okay, so now just to contrast it, we're going to look at the ending paragraphs of Old Yeller. So I don't know how this is a movie that I liked as a kid. So it's like I read both of these just within the last year. This one not so long ago.
I think Johnny has all the tear jerkers.
Oh, kinda. Well, if you saw the movie, you know. So it's a coming of age story of the young boy. Oh my gosh, and I just totally forgot what his name is, and I was looking over this morning. But and it's told in first person. So I was going to say too, this is told kind of from an omniscient point of view, and you can tell that even from the ending. This one's told actually written in first person, which is interesting for that time period. And what was I going to say? So it's wilderness. I think it's out in Texas, and the dad has to go away on a cattle drive, and so this boy, I think he's like 12, 14 years old. He's in charge of him, his mom, and his 4 or 5 year old brother, who's just a squirt. I mean, he is just so ornery and always loves throwing rocks at people, throws rocks at his brother all the time, so he's always getting in trouble. And this dog shows up and steals their food, and the protagonist of the story is very angry at that dog, hates that dog. But as the time goes on, again, there's these moments where he saves the dog saves him, the dog saves the family. And then towards the end, the dog is involved in a fight while saving the family. Um, and there's rabies going around. And so they're really afraid he has rabies, so he has to be locked up. And of course, he does. And the boy has to shoot him. So that's just a very traumatic experience. But this dog had fathered a litter of pups, and they had been given one of the puppies, which again, the protagonist hated the puppy too, because that he wasn't the same as old Yeller. Now, once again, I'm going to have to move you guys so I can see. Okay. So let me see. Up at the spring, I heard a splashing and hollering. I looked ahead. Sure enough, it was little Arliss. He was stripped naked and romping in our drinking water again. And right in there, romping with him, was that bread-stealing speckled pup. I started to holler at them. I started to say, Arliss, you get that nasty old pup out of our drinking water. Then I didn't. Instead, I went to laughing. I sat there and laughed till I cried, when all the time I knew that I ought to go beat them to a frazzle for messing up our drinking water. When finally I couldn't laugh and cry another bit, I rode on up to the lot and turned my horse in. Tomorrow, I thought, I'll take Arliss and that pup out for a squirrel hunt. The pup was still mighty little, but the way I figured it, If he was big enough to act like Old Yeller, he was big enough to start learning to earn his keep. So, what do you think of that one?
A little bit of redemption there, probably.
Yeah, you know,
And some wisdom, lessons learned, appreciation gained, surely.
Showing a bit of the life cycle, life going on, after one loss, you still have the others to carry on, kind of.
yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the language. I know that I can't probably put this so that you can see all of them together, but what do you notice about the language of these two stories?
Well, I was going to comment on the first one that I really liked the metaphors that he put in, the symbolism in the first one that really kind of conveyed the bigger picture of the story that was being told and summed it up really well. Like Pam was talking
Mhm.
about it gave that sense of I lost the word that I'm looking for. Yeah, just bringing it all together and making it all make sense. So yeah, I liked the symbolism in that one.
And what about the other one? What's the
Definitely the caricature and dialogue and stuff, and the
yeah.
yeah, the culture that's being represented there is vastly different from the first one. The other, Jack London's a lot about, survival in the wilderness and elements against you and stuff like this. But this one's a little more personal, a little more
Hmm.
focused on the people and the characters, and so you definitely get that right off the bat. It's not far removed like
First
Jack
one is
London
quite
is.
philosophical.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
This
not
is,
going to find words like glimmering borealis in old
yeah,
or
Well, you might in literary work.
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
It's not exactly redemptive, almost like the first one, but there's still that sense of full circle.
Hmm.
I've never read Old Yeller either because I knew the dog died and it was not, oh, I'm gonna, but I didn't know why he died. I just knew it was sad. And yeah, so I see a completeness in there, but I also see, like he said, I started to say, you know,
Hmm.
get that nasty old pup. Instead, he saw the humor in it. So it must show some type of character arc for this point of view character.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else? I can't see the chat, so I don't know if anyone has said anything in there or not. You guys will have to tell me. But anyway, it does show that, like, again, just a mini lesson, like the word you choose, the voice you choose, like this almost dialect, you can certainly tell where they're from, and then this other more literary voice. I mean, that goes a lot
Mhm.
towards telling your story and that base. And I will say too, in the movie, and I think it's true in the book too, the mom said, she takes the rifle and she says she will do it. And the boy says, no, he was my dog. I'm the one that has to take this shot. And it is. It's very, very tragic and very sad. So, okay, so that was Old Yeller and Call of the Wild, two dog stories that are very, very, very different. Yes, Sally, the Old Yeller dog is still dead. It's his puppy. And there is a second book called Savage Sam about the puppy, and it's pretty interesting too. All right, who wants to go next?
I don't have as much. I'll go next. I read
Okay.
Murder on the Orient
Oh,
Express
yes,
by
fun
Agatha
book.
Christie. It's the second Christie I've ever read, and I've heard like it's his most popular, her most popular, like that in movies and stuff and all. So I read it, and it's it was interesting. I'm not good at figuring out mysteries. I don't know how he figured it out, but he never really he guesses a lot, and he did that in the first one too. All of a sudden the answer came out of the blue. I did the ABC mysteries and it was like, where did that even come from? My understanding is Christie does that in her books. It's like she just pulls it out. There's no setup and all. This was a little more set up, and there's a murder on the train. The man was stabbed 12 times, and he was a horrible murderer from years and years ago, where he killed a child, and so um, turns out that 12 people all took a turn stabbing him. So he was stabbed 12 times by 12 people, because and nobody knew who actually killed him, because they all wanted, retribution, because they were all involved somehow with the family, of this murdered child. And then he set up the last line. She set up the last line earlier in that. The detective Poirot, he was ready to retire, and he was, on this train. And so then the last line is, he gives his answer, wants to turn it all over to the Yugoslavs to take care of, who's guilty and who's not. And he says, "Then," said Poirot, "having placed my solution before you, I have the honor to retire from the case."
Hmm.
Well, okie dokie. He solved it. But he did say earlier, he was ready to retire from being a direct detective. So I am interested in seeing the movie. It made me that interested. I'll probably look for that, maybe on Netflix or something. It's a whole different style of writing than any that I'm used to. And I like to read stuff that's way different, to stretch me a little. And some I've really liked over the years, and some I'm like, it's okay. But I'm glad I read it. I don't know I read any more Agatha Christie, but I'm familiar with how she writes now with the two. So I think it's good for all of us. Read a little something that we don't write, or that we don't typically read. Um, so
Do you
But I
find
know
that the ending was appropriate for the story, even if you didn't like it very much?
Yes, actually, because it got set up. He set up, he was retiring. He didn't really want to have to, and he was kind of thrust into this because there's the murder, and the train gets stuck in a snowdrift, and they can't get out. They're waiting for help and all. And so let's solve this murder, while we can. And because we're here, and if the train hadn't gotten stuck in the snow, it would have kept going, and he wouldn't have gotten involved. So yeah, it was, I think, an appropriate ending, but not exactly satisfying, because I don't know what happened after that. So
it almost sounded like it was closing not only this book though, but also his career.
yeah,
So I wondered if she didn't expect to, and I don't know that she did, whether she wrote more books about him or not, but
I didn't even think to look that up. I
yeah.
should look that up.
So, well, I know
She,
'cause I've read a lot
gosh,
of Agatha Christie. I know that she had hopped a lot, but
tons.
that was okay at that
Look at the
time.
list of books she
Oh
read. There's
yeah,
loads, or
there are.
wrote.
Yeah, there. She's like the number one, still the number one mystery bestseller, I think, ever. I mean, it's just incredible. But so her writing was different. She had hopped. She does some things that we're not, told not to do these days.
Mhm.
And then the other thing, that kind of a story, and I forget exactly what it's called, that trope, because it's not necessarily a locked room, because it's like there was ways to get into the room, but
Yeah,
it's that, it's like it's a closed circle, and I don't think that's the
yeah,
term they actually use, but there's like someone on that train had to be guilty. There was no way
yeah,
it could have been anybody else.
right.
It
Because
had to be.
nobody could get on, and nobody
Right,
could get off.
right. So it might, yeah, yeah. So that's an interesting trope to use. Did you read several years ago we did, and then there were none? Were you not with us then when we read
I
that
don't
book?
think so. Yeah.
That's a really interesting Agatha Christie book too. And I'm sorry to keep talking. I'm going to say one more thing. There are two movies that I know of. There may be more of the Orient Express. I don't know
Yeah.
who plays Poirot in the older one, but Ingrid Bergman plays in it. So that can give you an idea of the age of it. And I don't know who else, but there are people's names that you would probably know if you're a classic movie buff at all. You
Well,
would
I
know
don't
these.
know if these list of books are in order of,
Yeah.
if they are, she wrote a whole honking lot more after Orient Express. But She does have one that says Curtin Poirot's Last Case.
Oh,
So
yes, because he
I don't
actually
know if
died.
that came,
Yeah.
that would have had to have
Yeah.
come after. But they're, like I said, it's not in alphabetical order, so I don't know if they're in the order of um, publication, or when
And
she
he
wrote them.
wasn't her only detective. I mean, she had like
Right.
Miss Marple and then just kind of standalone stories too.
Yep, there's a list of marbles. Then she had one that published as Mary Westmacott. There's some books there under a pen name, memoirs, plays, regular mysteries. She's very prolific.
Oh, she really was. The newer movie's really good, but it does, I mean, it takes a little bit of liberties with her, with Poirot's character, but not enough to, to make a difference. It's pretty good.
Mhm. It sounds a confined area. Yeah, it's a train car. In a
Hmm.
train car, or not just one car, because they had the dining car that he did his interviews in and all, but it had the group of 12 of them, wherever they were in that train.
Hmm.
It didn't involve any other areas of the train, so it's kind of confined.
It was, yeah, it was. It was a twist. I mean, it was a good twist. Okay. Who else?
I guess I could go next.
Okay.
So I chose Robin Hood, but I chose the version that Howard Pyle wrote. And Howard Pyle, for those who aren't familiar with him, in the 1800s was, well, late 1800s, was a famous illustrator as well as a writer. In fact, he used children's stories to showcase his art. So this version that I have here has quite a few of his illustrations within it. And he was a painter as well as a just a drawer. So he did different versions of like Treasure Island and things like that too. And he was really most noted for his versions of Robin Hood and King Arthur's tales. And so this one I read a lot to my kids when they were little. And one of the things that I loved about it was his take on it was meant to be a little more cheery, at least at first, but full and encompassing. So it didn't focus solely on Robin Hood alone. When he starts the story out, he's inviting the reader in on this adventure, and we're going to see all of these married adventures, and you're going to enjoy it. You're going to love it. And he really engages you with his wordplay and with his description of the settings, which was, again, a product of its time. But what he does do that kind of switches things up is he gets you into all of the adventures, all of the nostalgia of it, and then he takes you to Robin's death, and it's just completely, you know, everybody likes the version of Robin Hood where it's happily ever after he marries Marian and it's all good. That doesn't happen in this story. And he warns the reader as he's getting to the end of it, now, friends, we're going to get to more somber things. And if you don't want to deal with it, you don't have to read on anymore. And he takes you into the tale, and it's very woeful. And basically, just summing up, Robin comes back from the Crusades. He's gone off with Alan Adale, his most loyal member of the whole group, and Alan's wife. And they return back, and after Richard is killed in the Crusades, and he goes to King John, and he's going to pledge his service to him because he's gained an earldom after fighting in the Crusades. And he asks King John to let him go to Nottinghamshire one more time and see the Sherwood. And he's given permission. So he goes with Alan, and they go to their tree that they always meet, and he's overcome with emotion. And so he blows his bugle like he always did when he called all of his merry men to him. And all of a sudden, they all show up, starting with Little John. And it's just so emotional a moment for him that he decides, I'm going to give away my earldom and go back to being Robin Hood. And everybody's happy again for this, but because of what he did, he angers King John. And so King John basically puts a bounty on him and sends a knight out with an army and gets the sheriff of Nottingham involved in it, and they go to hunt him down. And because of his experience with the Crusades, Robin is just angered by this, and he decides, I'm not going to run, I'm going to fight him. And so this big battle ensues, and the sheriff is killed. And even though Robin and his men come out of it as the victors, he just tears him up inside, and he broods over it so much that he comes down with a fever that he can't shake. And so he decides he's going to go to his cousin, who is a prioress at this nunnery. And he asks Little John to accompany him there. And he's going to go and try to engage her services as a leech. because she's so well known. Well, unbeknownst to him, his cousin is quite put out with him for giving away his earldom, and she's afraid that King John's going to come against her in her nunnery because she helped Robin Hood. So she devises to do Robin in, and he is taken up to a tower, and she refuses Little John to come with and has him shut outside the nunnery. And she goes and she cuts an artery instead of the vein and leaves Robin in the tower to bleed out. And if him not knowing, what's going on, he doesn't realize it until much too late that he's in trouble, and he calls for help, but nobody is around to help him. And so he goes and he grabs his bugle and he sounds it. And Little John comes running and he crashes through the gates and destroys them and goes up and charges and breaks into the tower and realizes it's too late. He can't save him. And he's vowing vengeance on the nuns and everything. And Robin says, no, don't hurt them. Don't do anything. Instead, I want you to help me. I want you to raise me up. I'm going to shoot an arrow out this window. And wherever the arrow lands, bury me there. And so that's where it leaves off here. Let me find the last lines for you. Let's see here.
This is tragic.
It is tragic. And it's very emotional, especially for Little John in the end of it too, and he helps him. Robin looses the arrow and he dies. And so Little John runs out and he gets all of the merry men to come back and bury him. And the closing goes like this. Thus died Robin Hood at Kirklees Nunnery in fair Yorkshire, with mercy in his heart toward those that had been his undoing. Oh, excuse me. For thus he showed mercy for the erring and pity for the weak through all the time of his living. His yeomen were scattered henceforth, but no great ill befell them thereafter. For a more merciful sheriff, and one who knew them not so well, succeeded the one that had gone. And they being separated here and there throughout the countryside, they abided in peace and quietness, so that many lived to hand down these tales to their children and their children's children. A certain one saith that upon a stone at Kirklees is an old inscription. This I give in the ancient English in which it was written, and thus it runs. Here underneath this little sten lies Robert, Earl of Huntingdon. Ne'er archer were as he so good, and people called him Robin Hood. Such outlaws as he and his men will England never see again. Oh, but the 21st calends of Decembris, 1247. And now, dear friend, yeah, I know it's kind of emotional, isn't it? And now, dear friend, we also must part, for our merry journeys have ended, and here at the grave of Robin Hood, we turn each going his own way.
Oh,
Goodness.
So they really get you with this string of emotions because you so much enjoy the whole story all the way up. And some of them are really funny. I mean, he really has a way of engaging you. And then when it comes to end, you're brokenhearted. It's like, no,
yeah.
I don't want the story to end. I don't want to go all my ways. I want to stay with Robin. I want to stay with all the merry men. And
Yeah.
so I just loved it. I loved the way he played to your emotion, whether you were a child or adult. You got into it and you loved it.
Not all stories end happily ever after, do they?
Hmm.
I like how personal it was too. Like, so often we don't speak directly to the reader anymore. I mean, that's sort of a,
Mhm.
Not a thing that we do. And it's really sweet. And sweet may not be the right word, but it kind of is. I mean, you've gone through this whole journey, and now it's like we've got to say goodbye to each other too. We're not only saying goodbye
Yes.
to Robin Hood, we're saying goodbye to each other.
Hmm.
So it's like an extra little bit of sadness there.
It's very endearing.
Hmm.
I like it when the author talks to the reader.
Hmm.
Tolkien did that.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
did. I love that too.
did. Yeah, that was great. Melissa, read Robin Hood, but I read the one by, is it Roger something Green or
I'm
his,
not sure
and
about
he's
that one.
also
That sounds
done
right.
he's also done the King Arthur one. So yeah, now I want to read this one.
I
Yep,
would
it's
read
called
it.
The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood by Howard Pyle.
Yeah, so cool. All right, anyone have any comments on that one? Someone said you read that version to your children.
Yes.
Exactly.
Oh, it's so much more fun, and it doesn't go into great detail, but it is emotional. Yeah, the kids loved it. Like, kids really enjoyed hearing me read it to them. I would do accents and all too,
Oh,
so
oh, I'm sure.
Oh, there
That's
you
so
go.
cute.
got to make it fun.
In stories like that, I mean, they teach, I mean, like you talked about the mercy at the end. So Robin Hood is his
Hmm.
hero, and think of the lessons that he's bestowing upon the reader. I mean, to be helpful, to
Hmm.
stand up for justice, and at the end, don't take vengeance on who turned out to be his enemy, thought it was going to be his
Yeah.
friend. So there's that
Yep.
betrayal, but
Hmm.
just don't leave.
Well, she was worried about her own skin.
Yeah,
Hmm.
she
Yeah, there's
was.
that. People do things they normally wouldn't do out of that type of fear.
Right.
Yep.
But I
Yeah, it
like that
has great
it ended
lessons.
where it says that people lived peacefully after that. And so
Mhm.
it reminds me of unless a seed falls to the ground and dies, it can't
Mhm.
multiply and
Yeah.
produce good, bring
Yes.
life,
Yeah.
right?
And
Yes.
that's really kind of pushed throughout the stories too, that Robin and his men made a difference, even though all of that ended so tragically, that their existence and what they did set an example for everyone. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it was really well summed up, I thought.
Love the classics. That's why they are classic. Oh, goodness. Okay. Brandy, you got something for us?
I do. And don't mind me if I've been wiping my eyes a little bit. I seem to have a case of the yawns, and every time I yawn, my eyes water, and then I can't see.
Oh.
So if I wipe my eyes, it's not that I'm bored with you or anything. It's just oxygen, I think.
Hopefully you're not getting sick because that's how I started.
Nah, more allergies and all of that.
Yeah. Everything's so dry.
Hmm.
So I did the snail and the rose tree, and
I love
Johnny's chuckling because I was like between this one and another one, but I used the beginning of this for a great sentence last week.
it.
And I'll just remind you of that because why not? Round about the garden ran a hedge of hazel bushes. Beyond the hedge were fields and meadows with cows and sheep. But in the middle of the garden stood a rose tree in bloom, under which sat a snail, whose shell contained a great deal, that is, himself. And that really does take you through the rest of the story. Let me just say that this is from the classic fairy tales of Hans Christian Andersen. So this is one of them. It is a short story. Doesn't take very long to read. But this snail and the rose tree are the two protagonists, or are they protagonists? Maybe one's an antagonist. Because we have the snail who will come out and he'll say, oh, well, he kind of criticizes the rose tree because she just gives roses. And he criticizes the cow because the cow just gives milk. And he criticizes one of the nut bearing trees because it just gives nuts. And he says, only wait until my time comes. I will do much more than grow roses and bear nuts or give milk and all of that. So he kind of boasts and says he's going to do more. And a whole year passes. And the snail spends it in his shell. He comes out, pokes his hat out, and he assesses everything. And he sees things were just the same as they were the year before. The rose tree has only given roses. The cow has only given milk. And so he's like, well, you haven't done very much, have you? So he goes back in for another year and comes back out and looks, and it's the same. And he's like, you're an old rose tree now. It's very plain. What have you done for your inner development? All you've ever done is produce roses. Haven't you done anything of lasting value to offer the world? And so the rose tree is taken back, like, oh, I haven't thought of that. All I did was just do what was within me to do and give roses. And there was this little girl who lit up when she took one of my roses, and another person who took my rose and put it in a book and kept it. But I guess I didn't really do much. But oh well, look at you. You are amazing, Snail. You have so much to give the world. And it's very clear you have this advanced intellect. So the rose tree had said, I forgot to say, the rose tree had said at the very beginning, well, I expect a great deal from you, because he spoke very much of himself and of things and was very insightful. He's like, I can't wait to see what you will give. And when will it come? And the snail's like, I take my time. So he comes back in, he's just in his house, and then he just criticizes, and he says, so he's like, he puts down all of everybody, and then the rose tree was like, well, what about you? You have such great intellects. What will you offer the world? And he's like, I don't bother myself with the world. I'm not going to offer anything to the world. It's no use to me. And so he sticks himself back in his house, and he goes on. And eventually both the rose and the snail die. And the rose bush had produced all of that. And the snail just did absolutely nothing, wouldn't have anything to do with anybody. And so the end of this story says, years passed by. The snail had turned to earth in the earth, and the rose tree too. Even the souvenir rose in the hymn book was faded, but in the garden there were other rose trees and other snails. The latter crept into their houses and spat at the world, for it did not concern them. Shall we read the story all over again? It will be just the same. And those last two sentences really got me. You have all this other stuff is like, if you have people of the same character, some that are just doing what God has put in them to do, that's all they know how to do. The snail would put down the others because they didn't do anything more than what they did. But the snail did nothing, absolutely nothing except criticize. And not only did he criticize, he put doubt into those that were doing what God had just made them to do. And they didn't think anything of it, they just did their purpose. And the snail just criticized. It really reminds me of kind of the enemy of our souls that comes at us and tries to tear us down, put doubt in us when we're just doing what God put in us to do. And then we start to get scared, like the rose tree did, got scared and said, well, I didn't think of all that. I was just doing what was natural for me to do. Um, but what does the end say? In the end, they both die, but very clearly one did what it was called to do, what was created to do, and the other one did not. And people that, it's just look at that. And I'm like, you read that all over again. Could the snail have changed? Well, perhaps, but the point of this story is to take a rose tree and a snail and to characterize a type of person. And so, I do not expect that ending. Shall we read it all over again? It will be just the same. I'm like, oh, it would be just the same, because if you are those characters, it won't be different. So anyway, yeah, that just really kind of stuck me really good when I read the ending. So there, Johnny, there is your ending for this. She's like, how does this, it's kind of like, well.
No, I still want to read it. I haven't had the chance yet, but that was when we talked about it, was it last week or whenever it was, the week before, it was that one especially kind of got to me. And I've only read really the only Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale I think I've read is The Little Mermaid. So I'm not even familiar with his
Oh,
work.
if you read The Ugly Duckling, that's in there as well.
Maybe versions of it, but probably
Yeah,
not the
not the original.
original.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Mm.
Does
I like
anybody else?
how,
Oh, go ahead, Pam. Go ahead.
yeah, I like how it's not explained so that when you're reading it to your kids, you can talk about it.
Mm.
Mhm.
It's not just served up. And the moral, little children, is
Like
if you,
Aesop's Fables, right? I'm reading
yeah.
those now. Yeah.
And then to even for grown-ups to say, have I done what I've been called to do?
Mm.
You know, to self-reflect a little bit, and because
Also, what else does it say? Know yourself.
yeah,
Know who God made you to be,
yeah.
and fulfill your purpose, no matter what
And
anybody
to
else
not,
says.
how many times do we look at other, let's just for the sake of, being authors, we look at other writers and we think, well, maybe I should be writing a little of that, and maybe I should try that, or, and if you're called to write little of this and little of that, like then you do that. But if you're not, you don't. You write what you're called to write. And so then you do have to know and inquire of God and ask him, what
Yeah.
am I writing? What am I writing for you? Yeah, that's good.
Very, very good. Does anyone else in the chat have anything they want to say or add, or a story that they want to share?
I will just put in a little plug for another Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale that also had a getcha ending. Everything has its place.
Everything has its place.
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, it's a little bit
I can
early, but that
I
just
can share,
oh,
but
go
I
ahead,
can't.
Leslie. I'm
I
sorry.
That's okay. I just I can't do the video obviously, but
Okay.
I can share.
All right.
I chose Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte.
Yeah.
It was the first novel that I ever read when I was in high school, and it may be the reason why I'm so against abuse. I don't know, because there's a lot, it's shared a lot in there. Um, Charlotte Bronte and her sister, they never married, but they were very much into their faith, and their writing was geared towards their faith a lot. So I valued that in this book. But in Jane Eyre, Jane is an orphan. She's abused as a child, and she runs away from her home, where John Reed, her one cousin, was abusing her, bullying her, and she was very unhealthy when she ran to the Rivers house, which also ended up being cousins, but you don't find that out till later. And she comes across a person, Mr. Rochester, she calls him, everything. And it's kind of like Jane Austen books. They're always Mr. Rochester, and it's very formal. But Mr. Rochester falls off his horse, and that's where she first sees him. And I guess because she was abused, she's very compassionate towards him. And she also saved him later. And he had a fire in his home. And they get very attached to each other, I guess, because she's always saving him. But she's also very kind because she wants to be kind to others because she was abused. And John Rivers, and she calls him Saint John Rivers because he was a clergyman, um, is her cousin. She finds out he's a cousin, but yet he also wants to marry her for his own reasons. He wants to go to India to do his missionary work. A lot of British clergymen back then, did go to India to do mission work. And his whole goal is just to have her as a wife, even though he loves somebody else, but he doesn't see her as good enough marriage material. So he pursues Jane, but Jane is confused because she's like, well, he's kind, but he has like an emotional distance from her, and she just doesn't feel that it's a right move. But then she's not real sure about Mr. Rochester either. But the last, I'll just read the last two paragraphs of it. She wrote about St. John. St. John is unmarried. He never will marry now. Himself has hitherto sufficed to the toil, and the toil draws near its close. His glorious sun hastens to its setting. The last letter I received from him drew from my eyes human tears, and yet filled my heart with divine joy. He anticipated his sure reward, his incorruptible crown. I know that a stranger's hand will write to me next to say that the good and faithful servant has been called at length into the joy of his Lord. And why weep for this? No fear of death will darken St. John's last hour. His mind will be unclouded, his heart will be undaunted, his hope will be sure, his faith steadfast. His own words are a pledge of this. My master, he says, has forewarned me. Daily he announces more distinctly. Surely I come quickly, and hourly I more eagerly respond. Amen. Even so come, Lord Jesus. So it was like a reference to us as, as Christians, our hope that, we look for the Lord to come. And I guess I didn't really remember that when I read it when I was 17 years old. Because when I picked books when I was young, I was always trying to pick the British ones. I don't know why. I was just like enthralled with the British ones, and I got enthralled with the historical ones. And I also loved that this was really fat. I picked books that were
No.
the fattest ones on the shelf. So I don't know if that's,
That's
but
funny.
it was just a really, really good story. There was a lot of emotion in it, and a lot of the battle of, how we look at people and how we build relationships with people based on our experiences, but then also based on our views that, that person is cold emotionally, so I don't want to be attached to him, but yet she valued him for his faith. And it was odd because he was a cousin. So I thought that was really strange when I was reading that 17. Somebody marrying their cousin, but it was probably like fifth removed, but they, Um, so I enjoyed it because of that, but I just valued the whole story itself, that she was abused. She was strong enough to get herself to her cousin's house, and I ended up becoming a governess um, of another woman, another girl in another household. And Mr. Rochester, was attached to her, and she chose to be with him because he showed her not only kindness, but also showed her emotion and love. And she needed that. And who doesn't need love in the world? We live in a cruel world, and we're always trying to seek relationships that give us that. So,
Very good. Very good.
mm,
I'm actually glad to hear you do that story. I read it a long, long time ago when I was not interested in it whatsoever. So I didn't remember the story. It's nice to hear a recap.
yes.
Same. I was in high school. I don't remember hardly any of it. So, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Well, Marshall's had it for $10 because Barnes and Noble, and it's a very pretty cover. Can't see it. It's like a brown, and then it has like a metallic green and pink flowers on it, and then a picture of, Jane Eyre and the house. And it's funny because the house that she describes is very different from how she lived. She very was in a very small home and very modest living. Her and her family were not wealthy, but she wrote about the wealth and wrote about the relationships and stuff within the wealthy. So that was different too.
Well, at least one or two of the girls of the Bronte sisters were governesses at different times, and I think they even ran a school themselves. It's, if I remember right, their brother was mm, not a good guy.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting story there. There are some great adaptations too of Jane Eyre, and um, one of my favorites is very, very old, but it has a very young Elizabeth Taylor playing one of the school
Yeah.
girls when Jane goes off to school, when her aunt doesn't want her around anymore and sends her off to this very horrible school. And Elizabeth Taylor plays her best friend, and she dies. I mean, of course, so there, it's always people,
Hmm.
but they were used to that. I mean, I don't want to say used to it in a callous way, but death was very much a part of life back then. Kids
Yes.
died very young and and often. So, it's just very sad. And so it's not surprising that they wrote about that often in their stories.
Mhm. I think what I love about the historical stories is the women always going through a lot, but still getting through it, overcoming and being strong. The romance is, it's always, I like the happy endings because the world is so cruel as it is. But I think just the stories themselves of going through and seeing how they struggle and how they overcome their battles. And not that other stories can't give you that too, but I don't know. I think it's just for me, it's valuable for me.
I really appreciated the moral compass of the story as well. I mean, being a hopeless romantic, I liked the romance aspect of the story, but she didn't settle for Rochester in the wrong way. She could
Right.
have gone ahead and been in a very bad relationship with him, but she stuck to her moral guns and said, no, not like this. And she left. And when things got better and it was right, then they were restored to one another. And so that aspect of it, I really appreciated that it wasn't just pushing romance for the sake of romance and oh, the
Right.
heartstrings. It was doing it right and showing a good example of what it should be.
She was only
Exactly.
going to marry for love. And for those of you who may not know, Rochester had a mad wife in the attic that nobody knew about.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's
I
why
do
they did
remember
not
that
get married
part.
at first.
Hmm.
But then she sets the entire house on fire, dies, and Rochester is blind, right? I mean, yeah.
He's
Right.
blinded.
And
Right.
Jane comes back to him and she marries him then because
Right.
she
I
was
forgot to add that
deeply
part.
in
Yes.
love with him.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's a good story. And we've talked about adaptations. I don't know if there are any adaptations of this rose tree and the snail or whatever the title, the snail and the rose tree, whatever. But there are great adaptations of Robin Hood. My favorite is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. So I'm gonna put a plug in for that one.
I like
That's one of
Robin
my
Hood
favorite
Men in
movies.
Tights because it made me laugh.
There were parts in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves that made me laugh quite a bit too, although most of them were, from Alan Rickman and Morgan Freeman. But
Yeah, they
Alan
were so
Rickman, you can't go
great in
wrong
that
there.
movie.
yeah, you
They
can't.
are
Oh,
great.
and the Friar
Oh,
Tupman's pretty
yes,
good.
he was really good too.
Yeah, yeah, you can't forget the fryer.
No. All right, Christine. She said she also has one to share with us. Can you come on in if you can? If we have you blocked.
No, you
Okay.
don't. I
Okay.
just, I'm in the middle of moving and packing, so
Okay.
my purchase.
You're good then.
And I got to read this to several students from cover to cover, is Little Women.
Oh, good one.
Little Women is kind of reflective of my own life because I too have four daughters and have a husband that's away much of the time.
Oh.
But he's a truck driver. He's not a
Mm.
doctor. Um, so the he's fighting in the war, my daughter said. Um, so if does anyone not know the plot of Little Women? Um, it starts out where these uh, probably preteen up to young adult girls are at home over Christmas. They're mourning the fact that their father won't be with them, and the uh, housekeeper uh, bring, helps them with dinner or I'm sorry, breakfast, Christmas breakfast, and they're just loving the fact that the breakfast is beautiful. It has um, beautiful descriptions of all of the food. And then Marmee, their mother, comes in and says, "The Hummels, they're sick and they have nothing to eat for Christmas, girls. I think we should share our breakfast." And they're like, "Oh, okay, Marmee." Like they overcome their own selfishness to give to others less fortunate. Um, and while they don't directly reference the Bible, it does. There's some talk, and I don't know enough about Louisa May Alcott to know what her faith is, but there's some talk about reading um, the book and some emotional development, which I think for the time period was rare. Like there was more of a focus on being healthy and having healthy relationships. And when approached by the young rich man that lived next door to them to be married, Joe, the second oldest, refused him because she knew that they would not be a good emotional match for one another, which shows a lot of maturity for a girl of a fairly young age. Um, and what ends up happening is there's trials. Their one sister gets sick with scarlet fever. She eventually dies in the next book. And through all of this, and at the end of the book, um, the youngest sister actually marries the
Yeah.
the rich next door neighbor. um, and they are very much emotionally matched. They're a good match. Um, and the mom also, emphasizes that their daughters should be um, looking more towards being happy rather than rich. And the last line is the whole family is gathered together, and they're talking about, each one is gets a chance to talk about their new households that they've established with their spouses. Um, and Marmee says, "Oh, my girls, however long you may live, I can never wish you a greater happiness than this."
Mm.
And um,
Oh.
this book is so close to my real life
Mm.
in lots of ways. Like, I like to write and I teach, and so Joe opens a school up for boys in this huge mansion that her aunt bequeathed her. And I have 4 daughters, and we've had struggles, and it kind of being happy despite the struggles,
Yeah.
or maybe even because of the struggles,
Mhm.
is why I love the book so much.
That was great. And there are several adaptations of Little Women. So we're going way back. I mean, again, one of my favorites is the oldest one. I always like the oldest ones, it seems like, of these movies, except for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, because that is my favorite of that one. But they're so good. It's interesting too. I don't know whether I'm going back to Jane Austen because people have been talking about her in the chat. It was she in the Bronte sisters contemporaries, or was she a little bit later than they were? Does anyone know off the top of their heads? Because their stories are so bleak. I mean, like they wrote, I forget, and I don't remember I never remember who wrote what, but it's like Jane Eyre. One of the other sisters wrote Wuthering Heights, which actually I started 2 or 3, 4 times, could not get through, and finally one time started it again and absolutely loved it. And it's like, just a fabulous, fabulous story. Um, Agnes Gray is one of them, and it's a dark story in lots of ways. Where Jane Austen has a brighter, you know, a whole different vibe to it than the Bronte sisters do with their stories. So that's interesting. And then Louisa May Alcott, of course, she was an American author. And if I remember right, I listened to a podcast about her life. That's been a bit. I don't think she ever married. She was like Joe a lot. And she did not want Joe to get married in her stories, but all of her young little fans just wanted Joe to be happy and to be married and, have a family. And so she finally had to give in to that and marry Joe, get married, have Joe marry somebody. Okay.
Yeah.
I did a quick search. They were not contemporaries.
Okay.
Jane
Yeah.
Austen died before the Bronte sisters were writing their work. So,
Really? I would have thought it had
Okay.
been the other way
Well,
around.
yeah,
I think
about a
some of
generation
it,
apart.
yeah, I think some of it may have
Oh,
to do with where they
I
lived as
guess.
well and the
Yeah.
Yeah.
culture in which they lived. I think the Bronte sisters had troubles with bad water, if I remember right, something like that.
Could
And
be.
were sick and I think passed away prematurely,
Yeah.
if I remember that correctly. So I think a lot of it has to, sometimes our writing has to do with the product of our upbringing,
Environment.
our
Yeah.
Yeah.
environment, our
Oh, yeah.
culture. You mix it all together, and what comes out in our
Yeah.
stories can be very
They were
filtered
lonely.
through
I
that.
think the Bronte
Yeah,
sisters were very lonely where they were.
they lived during the Victorian era. In fact, Jane Austen died in 1817, and Charlotte Bronte wasn't even born until 1816, and her
Oh,
sister
wow.
Emily 1818. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Leslie put
quite a
something in
little
the
bit
chat.
later.
Oh my
Yep,
goodness. How
giving you the
Well,
actual
different.
dates.
going back to Little Women, Beth did die, in the book. And I've got to say that I have reread that death scene over and over. It is some of the most beautiful writing I have ever
Mm,
read.
mm,
That, that on the chest the bosom of the one who, where she was first, drew her first breath. She drew her last,
Mm.
And
Oh
it's
my gosh.
beautiful, beautifully written, and I didn't want her to die, of course, because, when you love a character, you don't want them to die. But the way the author handled it was so beautiful. And I've read that book so many times, and every single time I weep when
Oh.
Beth dies, like the first time I read it, just because it was handled so beautifully. So I weep because she's gone, and I weep at the beauty of the words.
Mm, mm. Do you know? Okay, this I probably shouldn't even say this on the recording. So, Bethany's name is Bethany, right? And we have never called her Beth. We call her Bet. That's kind of her nickname sometimes, Bet, never Beth. And she hates the character Beth and hates the name Beth because Beth died in that story and she doesn't even like her. And so she never call her Beth. Oh my goodness. I don't
So
think she's ever
word
read the
of word of
book.
caution, never call her Beth. Beth.
You can call her
Yeah,
Bet.
yeah.
Yeah,
Note
just
to
call her
self.
Bet. Bet Jet. That's kind of how that Bet Jet. Oh my goodness. Oh, wow, this has
Yeah.
been so fun. I feel like we could just keep on going if we learned something. Yeah. And it's interesting because we're talking about last lines, not first lines, but like
Yeah.
that just emotional wrapping up of a story. And I think everybody
Mm,
did a story that the authors did a really phenomenal job bringing it to a close. And of course, they
mm.
are accomplished writers, so we would expect that, but still,
Yes.
it just
Well, if you think about it, last lines have to be good. And even if you don't like it, it has to close it well. I have to say, there was one miniseries on television that I loved the entire thing. It was an adaptation of The Wizard of Oz. And the very end of it completely destroyed the entire miniseries that I had spent hours and hours watching because the end result and what the villain wanted was not enough to be worth fighting for. I'm like, all of
hmm.
that was just for darkness. She wanted darkness for seriously. That's it. And it was just like so little. It totally destroyed the story. So last lines, they're everything. They can
Super
completely
important.
destroy a story. I read another book that I will not mention the name of, but the entire thing was fantasy. And on the very last couple of lines, it explained the entire three-book series as being science fiction from aliens that came down. And
What?
I'm like,
Uh,
what? What? You cannot do that. So last lines have to be fitting for the story to resolve it. Even if the reader doesn't
Yes.
like it, it still has to fit.
Yes.
and it
Yes.
can't be all a
And
dream.
now I
No,
was just gonna, I
no,
was just thinking that. Oh, and it was all a dream. No,
no,
don't do
no, no
that.
dream. No, no.
No, that's cheating.
Mm-mm.
That is called cheating.
That is cheating.
Yeah.
That's total cheating. That is how to alienate your readers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because
That's
even the
that
Wizard of
resonates.
Oz, Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz, she does not wake up from a dream. She she
No,
she's in Kansas and she sees
it
the house and
happened.
she runs. Yes, she runs back to the house. It's
Hmm.
just like she just
Yeah.
appears in the cornfield or whatever, and that's where she is. Just,
Yeah.
oh, I'm
I
home.
remember she puts on the shoes, and the shoes take her 3 steps across the desert, and then she's
Is
home.
that what it is?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
read
And
all
then
of
and
them.
then she's home.
Yeah.
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 She
Yeah.
thinks she's had a dream, but it wasn't.
Right.
Yeah.
It
No,
really,
in
yeah,
the
it wasn't a
book, she
dream.
does
Or at
not
least
wake
not for
up
the
in her
reader.
bed at
Yeah.
all. I mean, there's
Yeah.
no waking up in my bed and I'm, it's
Mm-mm.
like,
Yeah.
oh, no,
Yeah.
it was she actually just like, oh, I am back in
Yeah.
Kansas.
Yeah. Now, the movie adaptation did a little bit differently,
It did.
but
Yes.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it works for the
Yeah,
movie. I
quite a
mean, it does
bit.
work for the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
I like
Not
the
everything translate to the moving screen, so.
Yeah.
I like the movie version of Cinderella, the 2015 version, because of the ending where she says, "I forgive you" to her stepmother.
Mhm.
She
Yes.
wasn't going
The
to
one with
carry the
Lily
bitterness
James.
with
Yeah.
her. Yes. And
Mm-hmm.
she was not going to carry the bitterness with her. She said, "I forgive you," and then she can go live happily ever after
Oh,
and not
Mm-hmm.
have that bitterness in her heart.
You
I
really
thought
Yeah.
can't live happily ever after if you have bitterness in your heart.
Mm-mm.
So,
right.
yeah.
Right. Right.
Which version was that? Who?
The 2015
Dis
movie
Disney
version.
put out
Okay.
Disney put out a version that was not animated
Yeah, it
with
was all filmed in
Lily
France too. It was
James.
very, very
Oh,
well
with
done.
the Lily James version. Okay.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I really like Ever After, which is
Yes.
Yes, that's good
it
too.
is the Cinderella story, but it ends with it's not whether they lived happily ever after. The point is they lived,
Right.
the
Yes.
love.
Right.
That's the last line I think of the movie.
Yes.
They lived.
Mhm.
So movie last lines have to be good too.
Yes,
They
they
do.
do. Yep.
Mm. All right. Well, this is
Let's talk about probably what's up for next week.
next week. Who wants to tell about next week? Melissa? It's Becky. We're having writers.
Okay. Yeah, I was sitting, my brain was
You're
totally
fine.
blanking. What's
Writer's
going on next week?
Journey.
Writer's
Yeah.
Journey
Yeah.
with Becky.
Becky Ann Koviak's going to join us and share her writer's journey, all that she has experienced from the start to 540 to her new position. And yeah, it's going to be fun. I hope you will join us.
Yes, yes. And if you're watching the replay, thank you. We're really glad you do. But if you're able to join us any Tuesday morning, please do. We're here. We'd start at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 10 o'clock Central. Go around the globe, find your time zone, and join us. Also, all of our YouTube or all of our episodes are on our YouTube channel, Writers Chat. And we have the Writers Chat Facebook page and the Writers Chat Facebook members group. So you can join us either those places and also see all the episodes and who we've had as guests and help your writing career grow. That's what we want to do and love for you to
We're
be
10
part of
years
it.
old. Ah,
Yes, we are 10 years
10,
old. I can't
10.
believe
We,
it.
yeah, yep. Just to recap from last week, in case you missed it, we realized we're 10 years old, not less.
And probably as of sometime in September was probably our 10th birthday. So yeah,
Wow.
across some old emails
So
and
that's a lot of
a
episodes,
Facebook memory and
Yes.
yep. Now they're not all
which
out
explains
there.
why we have over 300 episodes.
Exactly. Because all of our blab episodes
Wonderful.
they're gone. So
Yeah.
they've disappeared. But anyway, yeah, we've got a lot of episodes and more to come. Lots more to come.
Yes.
So thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for sharing your last lines and some of these favorite books. This was delightful. This was a fun episode. I really enjoyed it.
Was.
Stay around for the after party. Till next week. Bye bye.